Alex Marlowe took a deep breath as he stepped off the transport ship, his boots landing with a dull clunk on the polished metal floor of Unity Nexus. The station's entry hall was a gleaming spectacle, towering columns adorned with holographic displays and the soft glow of blue light panels that illuminated rows of alien species passing through in every direction. This place, the Nexus, was the galaxy's central hub for peace, diplomacy, and supposedly unity. And Alex was here to represent humanity, as best as he could. "Human," a voice announced, sharp and clipped. He looked over to see an officer, a slim, insectoid-looking alien with multifaceted eyes and a stack of tablets balanced in her hands. "Your designation?" She didn't look at him as she spoke, her mandibles clicking with impatience. "Alex Marlowe, Engineer, United Human Alliance." He offered his hand instinctively, then hesitated, unsure if this species even shook hands. The officer gave a brief glance at his outstretched hand, looking almost amused. "Welcome to Unity Nexus," she replied, motioning him to follow. "Your presence is noted. Please proceed to the main chamber for orientation. Counselor Seraphis will be expecting you." The emphasis on counselor made her mandibles twitch. Seraphis. He'd heard the name before, the council member who had been the loudest voice against humanity's inclusion in the galactic community. Alex tried to keep his face neutral. He'd be on his best behavior. He was here to keep things running smoothly, no matter who objected to his presence. As they walked, Alex noticed the other species giving him sidelong glances, some with mild curiosity, others with suspicion. It was one thing to study alien cultures from a distance, but it was another to be surrounded by them. Alien languages hummed around him, a blend of voices that made him feel both out of place and strangely thrilled. They entered the main chamber, a vast, open room with a high-domed ceiling. Standing by a console in the center was Seraphis. The counselor looked like a cross between a lizard and a bird, his skin a mix of dark green scales and sleek feathers that glinted under the overhead lights. He turned as Alex approached, his amber eyes narrowing with what Alex assumed was distaste. "Human representative." Seraphis greeted him with a bow that seemed more ceremonial than friendly. "You are here as an engineer, I believe?" His voice was smooth but carried an undertone of condescension. "Yes, Counselor. I'm here to ensure that our infrastructure contributions meet the Nexus's standards," Alex replied, keeping his tone steady. "We're excited to be part of this community." Seraphis tilted his head. "Interesting choice of words," he murmured, folding his arms. "Excitement can be a volatile quality in a community designed for harmony." He gestured to the console. "We prefer a controlled approach here. You'll find that expectations on Unity Nexus are high, Mr. Marlowe. Your kind's tendencies toward improvisation may not be suitable." Alex felt the jab, but he forced a nod. "Understood, Counselor. I'm here to learn from the best and to do what's needed." Seraphis studied him for a moment before giving a faint nod. "See that you do." Before Alex could respond, an alarm blared from the far side of the room. He turned in time to see several holographic screens flash red, warning symbols popping up in alien scripts he didn't recognize. Instinctively, Alex moved toward the control panel, scanning for anything he could make sense of. "It's a power fluctuation," he said quickly, pointing to the data stream. "If that spreads to the docking ports, we'll lose control of the security barriers. Those screens might go out." Seraphis frowned but said nothing. Instead, he watched as Alex navigated the unfamiliar controls, fingers flying across the console. He rerouted the energy flow and adjusted the output levels to stabilize the power surge. Within seconds, the flashing lights dimmed, and the alarm quieted, returning the room to its usual calm. Several aliens nearby murmured in surprise. Seraphis, however, looked unimpressed. He gave a dismissive wave. "An unremarkable incident," he said, though his tone seemed a shade tighter than before. "Nonetheless, I suppose you've prevented a minor inconvenience." "Glad to be of service," Alex replied with a hint of a smile. It wasn't lost on him that Seraphis had hoped he'd fail. The looks exchanged between the counselor and the officers present were evidence enough of that. Just then, a tall, willowy figure with translucent skin approached him. Her eyes were a shade of silver that Alex had never seen, and she wore a uniform marked with the insignia of the Nexus Maintenance Division. "I saw what you did there," she said with a nod, introducing herself as Kayla, one of the few alien engineers on Nexus who managed infrastructure. "You know your way around unfamiliar systems?" "It's part of the job," Alex replied. "Humans are good at adapting. We kind of have to be." Kayla's lips quirked in a smile. "Then you may find more work here than you expected," she murmured, glancing around the room where several consoles still flickered irregularly. "There's been a lot of unexplained malfunctions recently." "Malfunctions?" Alex echoed, catching the wary look she gave towards Seraphis, who was deep in conversation with another alien. "Anything specific?" She shrugged, though her eyes held a hint of warning. "Power fluctuations, unusual errors in the environmental systems, you name it. Some say it's bad luck, others think it's sabotage. But things started getting worse once humans were invited here." "Keep your head down, Marlowe." Alex nodded, his mind already racing with possibilities. He hadn't been on Nexus for more than a few hours, and already the tension was thick enough to cut with a knife. And if Seraphis was hoping for humanity to fail, it wouldn't be hard for him to make these malfunctions look like human mistakes. "Thanks for the heads up, Kayla," he said quietly. "I'll keep that in mind." She nodded, then drifted away, her translucent form almost ghostly as she moved through the crowd. As Alex turned back to the main chamber, he caught Seraphis watching him from across the room, his expression unreadable. Alex returned the stare, his determination hardening. If this was how it was going to be, he'd prove himself, not just to the counselor, but to the whole station. Fine, he thought, if they were so sure humans were the problem, he'd show them just how well humans could handle it. He had no intention of leaving until they knew that Earth's contributions were here to stay. Alex woke to a shrill alarm echoing through his small quarters. He shot up, blinking in the dim light, his mind immediately alert. Another failure, another problem he'd likely be blamed for. He threw on his uniform and hurried out, joining the stream of personnel flowing toward the main hall. As he approached the source of the commotion, the hallway walls flickered, lights dimming as a low hum pulsed through the station. This wasn't just a minor glitch, it was something big. He quickened his pace, arriving to see Counselor Seraphis standing with arms crossed, his expression a careful mask of disappointment. "Mr. Marlowe," Seraphis called out, eyes narrowing. "How appropriate of you to arrive. Another human-related system disturbance, I presume?" Alex gritted his teeth, determined to remain calm. "With all due respect, Counselor, I haven't even been near this section of the station since I arrived." Seraphis held his gaze, his mouth twitching into a faint smile. "Yet, statistically, the increase in technical issues correlates precisely with humanity's arrival here. An unfortunate pattern, wouldn't you say?" Ignoring the bait, Alex moved past him to assess the damage. Holographic screens showed data spikes in multiple systems, life support, energy, and even the environmental controls. The scope was vast, too extensive to be a random malfunction. He leaned over the nearest console, his fingers dancing across the unfamiliar symbols, decoding where the surge had started. "Here," he muttered to himself. "Power rerouted from Deck 12. He turned to one of the engineers nearby, an octopus-like creature with multiple hands covered in thin metallic exoskeletons. "Can you isolate the system starting from this junction?" The engineer looked at him uncertainly but began tapping on her own console. Within moments, a diagram of the power grid flashed up, showing a series of abnormal energy loops. Kayla appeared at his side, her silvery skin flickering in the emergency lights. "So, what are we dealing with, Alex?" "It looks like someone rerouted the power intentionally," he replied quietly. "This isn't a simple failure, it's sabotage. They're using a cloaking mechanism to hide the source, but if we trace it, we can find where the surge originated." Kayla's eyes darkened. "So the rumors were true?" Alex nodded grimly. "And now it's our job to fix it, unless we want the whole station to fall apart." They worked in tandem, navigating the labyrinth of Nexus's power grids and redirecting energy flows to prevent further disruptions. With Kayla's insights on the station's systems and Alex's quick improvisation, they managed to re-establish stability, but it left him uneasy. The deeper he looked, the clearer it became. Someone was deliberately creating chaos, and all the signs pointed to humanity as the scapegoat. When the immediate threat subsided, Seraphis reappeared, eyeing the gathered engineers. "Well, Marlowe, I see you've managed to prevent further disaster, for now. But this situation only reinforces my concerns." Alex clenched his fists. "Counselor, if someone is sabotaging these systems, they're doing it to frame humans. I've seen clear signs of interference. Someone's exploiting Nexus's protocols to create these malfunctions." Seraphis raised a brow, a mocking glint in his eye. "Sabotage? An interesting claim, though a convenient one, wouldn't you agree?" Alex bristled. "If I may speak freely, Counselor, someone is going to a lot of trouble to make humanity look unreliable. We need to track the source before these issues escalate further." For a long, tense moment, Seraphis held his gaze, a glimmer of frustration in his eyes. Then, in a dismissive tone, he replied, "I suggest you mind your tone, Mr. Marlowe. You are here as a guest, after all." Alex bit back a retort as Seraphis turned away, addressing the engineers behind him. "Due to recent disturbances, I am instating new restrictions on human activity aboard Nexus. Until further notice, human personnel are limited to non-critical areas only. This is for the station's safety, of course." A murmur spread through the crowd, and Alex felt a surge of anger. This was exactly what Seraphis had wanted, an excuse to isolate humanity. He exchanged a look with Kayla, who gave him a small nod, urging him to stay calm. Later, as the crowd dispersed, Alex and Kayla found a quiet corner near the engineering decks. She sighed, rubbing her temples. "Seraphis won't stop until he has enough reason to cut humans off completely. Then we need to give him no reason at all," Alex replied, his jaw clenched. "We'll find out who's behind this, prove it's sabotage, and put a stop to it." Kayla hesitated, glancing around before lowering her voice. "You should know, Alex, there are others on Nexus who believe in humanity's potential. They're silent for now, but if you expose the truth, they'll support you." Alex nodded, grateful for the assurance. "Then I'll make sure I don't let them down." The next day, Alex set to work on his plan. First, he would need access to the security logs from the station's core, a task easier said than done, given the new restrictions. But Kayla had managed to secure temporary clearance for him, providing him a narrow window. In the core data room, he scanned through weeks of logs, searching for any pattern in the disruptions. Hours passed in silence as he reviewed file after file, his eyes darting over energy readings, atmospheric data, and timestamps. At last, he found a trace, an energy spike at regular intervals, always centered on Nexus's critical systems. Someone was feeding off the station's own power to trigger these malfunctions. Just as he was copying the data, footsteps echoed in the hallway. Alex froze, quickly tucking the datapad into his uniform and pretending to study a nearby console. A security officer, a tall, armored alien with yellow skin and large eyes, entered, eyeing him with suspicion. "You're out of your restricted zone, human," the officer said, his tone firm. "Apologies," Alex replied, holding up his clearance card. "Temporary access for diagnostics." The officer inspected the card, his gaze lingering on Alex's face before he nodded curtly. "Don't linger. Some here are uncomfortable with your presence. Trust me, I'm not exactly enjoying it either," Alex muttered as the officer left. With a sigh of relief, he returned to his quarters, locking the door behind him. Finally alone, he reviewed the data again, piecing together the fragments. Whoever was behind this was clever, layering false signals over the real ones, making it look like human errors. But he'd seen enough evidence to take to the council, or, at least, to those willing to listen. As he prepared a report, a message flashed on his communicator. It was from Kayla. "Be careful, Alex. The more you dig, the more attention you draw. Trust only those you're sure of. ****. He set the communicator down, feeling the weight of her warning. This was no ordinary task, no simple troubleshooting mission. He was caught in a game far bigger than he'd signed up for, and the stakes weren't just his reputation, they were humanity's future in the galaxy. Alex knew one thing for certain: he couldn't back down. Alex's boots echoed softly as he made his way down one of the less traveled maintenance corridors, the dim blue light casting long shadows on the metal walls. Every corner felt like a potential trap, every sound a sign of someone watching. But he had no other choice. After his discovery in the Corps' data room, he needed answers, and he needed them fast. He adjusted his grip on the data pad in his hand, fingers scrolling through the report he'd prepared. It was detailed, carefully assembled from logs, readings, and timestamps that painted a clear picture of sabotage. The problem was getting anyone to listen. Seraphis had made it obvious he didn't care for explanations. He'd rather use Alex's findings against humanity than search for the truth. If Alex was going to expose the real saboteur, he'd need to get creative. His communicator buzzed, a quiet pulse that nearly startled him. He glanced at the screen. "Meet me at docking bay 7. Urgent. ****. It was from Kayla. With a wary glance around, Alex redirected his path. Docking bay 7 was far from Nexus's central hub, where most people congregated, which made it a perfect place to talk privately. His heart thudded as he walked, each step pulling him deeper into the station's underbelly, where only maintenance personnel and a handful of trusted engineers ventured. As he rounded a final corner, Kayla was waiting, her slender figure partially hidden in the shadows. She glanced around before gesturing for him to hurry. "Kayla," he greeted her in a low voice. "What's going on?" "Keep your voice down," she whispered, pulling him into the shadows. "I had to take precautions to avoid being seen. Things are worse than I thought, Alex. This isn't just sabotage, it's a coordinated attack, and it's targeting humans specifically." He swallowed, feeling the weight of her words settle heavily in his chest. "Who's behind it?" She shook her head, her expression grim. "I don't know yet, but they're using agents within Nexus itself. I've traced several unauthorized access attempts in high-security areas, each time with human credentials. They're trying to make humanity look like a liability." Alex clenched his fists. "If we can get this information to someone on the Council who's willing to listen, we might be able to stop it." Kayla looked away, hesitation flickering across her face. "It's not that simple. Seraphis controls the Council majority. Anyone who speaks out risks their position or worse. But," she looked up, determination hardening her gaze, "I've found one ally. An old friend of mine who works directly with the Security Division. He's agreed to help us if we bring him concrete proof." Alex nodded. "Then let's get the proof." They moved swiftly, navigating through quiet hallways and ducking into shadows whenever footsteps approached. The plan was simple but dangerous. Break into a restricted Nexus system, locate the original logs that had been tampered with, and retrieve the raw data. With that, they could expose the real culprit, or at least cast doubt on Seraphis's narrative. As they approached the restricted access door, Kayla produced a small device, something Alex hadn't seen before. She pressed it against the console, and after a few seconds the door slid open with a soft hiss. "After you," she whispered, her tone light despite the tension. They stepped inside the dimly lit server room, rows of data terminals lining the walls, each humming quietly. Alex scanned the consoles, locating the terminal linked to Nexus's security logs. He quickly accessed the system, typing in a series of commands to reach the raw data. Kayla stood watch, her eyes scanning the room, tense and alert. "Almost there," he murmured, his hands flying over the unfamiliar controls. Finally, he found it, a hidden log buried beneath layers of code, where recent access had been logged. His heart sank as he saw what he'd feared, several instances of tampered data, each recorded under human identifiers. "This is it," he whispered. "Someone's framing us, using fake credentials to plant false readings. It's all here." Kayla leaned over his shoulder, studying the screen. "Enough to make even the Council question Seraphis. she murmured. If we can get this to my contact, we might have a chance. But before he could respond, the sound of footsteps echoed in the hall outside, heavy and deliberate. Alex tensed, exchanging a look with Kayla, who signaled for silence. The footsteps grew louder, closer, then stopped right outside the door. A muffled voice issued a command, and the door slid open. Alex's heart raced as a tall, armored figure entered the room, a security officer, and not just any officer. The figure's armor bore the insignia of Seraphis' personal guard. "What are you doing here?" The guard's voice was cold, metallic, and unwavering as he scanned the room. "Humans are restricted from this sector." Alex struggled to come up with an answer, but Kayla stepped forward, her voice calm. "Council directive, urgent diagnostics," she replied smoothly, holding up a badge she had clearly prepared for moments like this. The guard narrowed his eyes, gaze flicking between them, suspicious. "Council orders do not grant unrestricted access to human personnel. Step away from the console." Alex held his breath, every muscle tensed, but Kayla remained unfazed. "With respect, officer, we have an immediate order from Security Chief Narish. You can confirm if you like, but given the nature of our work, I'd suggest you avoid delaying us." The guard stared at her for a long moment, his gaze icy. Then, with a reluctant nod, he stepped back, allowing them to pass. As soon as they were out of earshot, Alex let out a slow breath. "You really pulled that off," he whispered, impressed. Kayla allowed herself a faint smile. "Years of working with stubborn officers, Alex. Now let's get this to our ally before anyone else catches on." They moved swiftly, winding through the hallways until they reached the auxiliary deck, where Kayla's contact waited. He was a broad-shouldered figure with scaled skin, his piercing eyes darting to their surroundings as they approached. "Galen," Kayla said, greeting him with a nod. "We have what you asked for." Galen gave a brief nod, his gaze flicking to Alex. "The human engineer. You're brave to be here, considering the scrutiny your people are under." Alex met his gaze, unflinching. "If that data doesn't get to the right people, it won't matter how brave any of us are." Galen considered him for a moment, then motioned them forward. "Follow me. I have a secure channel in my office." Once inside, Alex uploaded the data onto Galen's console. The security officer studied it closely, his expression growing more serious as he scanned the logs. Finally, he leaned back, eyes fixed on the screen. "This is undeniable evidence," he murmured. "Someone with high-level access has manipulated the station's systems against your people." Kayla stepped forward, her voice steely. "Then it's time we bring this to the council, before Seraphis can cover it up." Galen nodded, his gaze hardening. "I'll bring it to Chief Narish personally. With this, Seraphis will be forced to answer questions he won't want to face." As Alex listened, relief mingled with a renewed sense of determination. They had what they needed. But as he met Kayla's gaze, he knew this was only the beginning. Now they had allies, proof, and a slim chance to turn the tide. It would be enough, he told himself. It had to be. Alex paced anxiously in Kayla's quarters, his mind racing with what they'd uncovered. They were sitting on the truth, the evidence that humanity was being framed and manipulated, but now they had to rely on Galen to bring it forward without it being intercepted or suppressed. Every passing second felt like another chance for Seraphis' allies to erase or twist their findings. Kayla studied him from her seat, her expression calm but her eyes sharp. "We've done everything we could, Alex. Galen's loyal to Chief Narish. He'll get the data into the right hands." He stopped, looking over at her. "I know. I just can't shake the feeling that we're missing something. Seraphis wouldn't go this far without planning for contingencies. He has to know people would question this sooner or later." Kayla nodded slowly. "If we're missing something, we won't find it pacing in here. Seraphis may have miscalculated, though. Narish has been vocal about his distrust of Seraphis' recent policies. He values Nexus's diversity, and he won't stand for Seraphis' quiet push to isolate humanity." Alex nodded, but he didn't feel reassured. They were so close, but Seraphis was still holding all the cards. He knew that Seraphis' followers would defend him, even against clear evidence, and for some, the truth wouldn't matter, they just wanted humanity gone. A chime sounded on Kayla's communicator, jolting them both. She glanced at it, then looked back at him, her expression unreadable. "It's Galen. Narish wants us in his chambers. Now." The corridors felt longer than usual as they walked, each step tense with the weight of what lay ahead. As they neared the council chambers, security tightened. Officers lined the walls, their postures rigid, their expressions unreadable. The council's towering doors slid open, revealing a round room bathed in cold light, the air heavy with formality. Chief Narish stood at the center, his broad form imposing yet calm. His scaled, deep purple skin gleamed under the overhead lights as his sharp eyes tracked their entrance. Galen stood beside him, his expression equally solemn, datapad in hand. Narish's gaze met Alex's, his expression hardening. "Mr. Marlowe." "Kayla. I've reviewed the data Galen provided, logs, timestamps, and evidence of tampered files. It's as you said, the sabotage on Nexus was engineered by someone framing humanity." Relief washed over Alex, though he kept his composure. "Then you believe us?" Narish gave a slight nod. "The evidence leaves no room for doubt. But understand, this is bigger than sabotage. Seraphis has exploited Nexus's vulnerabilities to push his own agenda, to shift opinion against humanity." Alex and Kayla exchanged a glance, both of them feeling the weight of what Narish was saying. If Seraphis was willing to sabotage Nexus itself, there was no limit to the damage he might cause. Narish's voice cut through their thoughts. "This won't be easy. Seraphis holds significant influence, but we're taking steps to remove him from his position. We'll need to move quickly and gather support. There are those who stand with him, yes, but there are others who see the value humanity brings to Nexus." Kayla stepped forward, her voice steady. "Then let us help. We know the systems, and we know Seraphis's methods. Whatever you need from us, we're ready." Narish nodded approvingly, then glanced at Galen, who activated his datapad and projected a hologram of Nexus's main control systems. "Our plan is twofold," Narish explained. "We need to deactivate Seraphis's access before he realizes we're onto him. He's established shadow protocols within Nexus's mainframe that allow him to bypass regular security checks. These protocols make it easy for him to manipulate data, as you've seen. If we cut him off, he'll lose that leverage." Alex studied the hologram, his mind already working through the logistics. "I'll need direct access to the central mainframe to shut down his shadow protocols. If we do this quickly, we can prevent him from erasing anything or retaliating." Narish's gaze was firm. "Then do it. You'll have top security clearance for the next hour, and Kayla will be with you. Once you're in, Galen and I will confront Seraphis." The plan was clear, but there was no time to waste. Alex and Kayla left the chambers, racing through Nexus's hallways toward the mainframe access point. The corridors were emptier than usual, tension filling the air as word of Narish's intentions began to spread. They arrived at the mainframe doors, two massive panels set deep into the wall. Alex swiped his temporary clearance badge, and the doors opened with a quiet hiss, revealing the vast room beyond, filled with whirring servers and flashing terminals. "Stay sharp," Kayla whispered as they entered. "We'll only have minutes before Seraphis realizes what's happening." Alex moved quickly, taking a seat at the central console. He typed in the access code Narish had given him, a rush of data flowing across the screen. For a moment, he was lost in the stream of information, tracking each shadow protocol Seraphis had installed, each piece of the hidden web he'd spun around Nexus's systems. "There," he muttered, fingers flying across the keyboard. "Found his entry points. I'm shutting them down now." Kayla stood nearby, her eyes scanning the room. "Hurry, Alex. Security just tightened on the outer perimeter. We might have visitors soon." He worked as fast as he could, dismantling each protocol, redirecting the pathways Seraphis had built. Sweat beaded on his forehead as he navigated Nexus's complex systems, aware that every second brought them closer to confrontation. Just as he disabled the final protocol, a warning flashed on the screen. Alert! Unauthorized access detected, a mechanical voice announced. He and Kayla exchanged a quick, tense look. It was only a matter of time before Seraphis or one of his allies came to investigate. Almost done, he whispered, hitting the last command. That's it. Seraphis is locked out. But as he stepped back from the console, footsteps echoed from the corridor outside, loud and heavy. The doors slid open, and 2 security officers stepped in, their expressions hard as they locked eyes on Alex and Kayla. Step away from the console, one of the officers commanded. Kayla stepped forward, her posture calm but defiant. We're here under Chief Narish's orders. Stand down. The officers hesitated, glancing at each other, doubt flickering in their eyes. But before they could respond, a new figure appeared in the doorway, Seraphis himself, his cold gaze fixed on Alex. So, he said, his voice a venomous whisper. You've chosen to defy me, haven't you? Alex held his ground, meeting Seraphis's gaze without flinching. The only one defying Nexus's principles is you, Seraphis. I found your shadow protocols, your attempts to frame humanity. Seraphis's face twisted in a sneer. Nexus's principles? Don't be naive, human. Nexus is stronger without your kind. I did what was necessary to protect us from the chaos you bring. Kayla stepped closer, her voice cutting. You exploited Nexus's trust to push your own agenda. You won't get away with it. Seraphis scoffed, his gaze darkening. Do you truly believe Narish can stop me? I have allies in every corner of this station, people who see humanity for the threat it is. But before he could continue, footsteps approached, and Narish entered, flanked by Galen and more officers. He fixed Seraphis with a cold stare. It's over, Seraphis, Narish said, his voice like steel. Your shadow protocols have been dismantled, and your sabotage exposed. You're relieved of your duties, effective immediately. Seraphis's face contorted with rage, but he said nothing, merely glancing from Alex to Narish with hatred. With a curt nod, Narish signaled to the guards, who stepped forward, securing Seraphis and leading him out. As the doors closed, Narish turned to Alex and Kayla, nodding approvingly. You've done Nexus a great service today. Humanity's place here is secure thanks to you. Alex released a long breath, a sense of relief washing over him. They'd won for now. Chapter 5: The New Alliance. The silence after Seraphis's departure hung in the air like a fragile balance, teetering on the edge. Alex, standing beside Kayla in Narish's office, felt both the weight of relief and the lingering uncertainty. They had managed to expose the truth, but Nexus had been shaken, and he knew not everyone would accept the reality that Seraphis, a trusted member of the Council, had been behind the sabotage. Chief Narish's voice cut through the silence. You've both shown resilience and courage, and Nexus owes you a debt. He looked directly at Alex, his gaze stern but appreciative. Your willingness to risk your safety for the truth has prevented a grave injustice against humanity. I want you to understand that. Thank you, Chief, Alex replied, choosing his words carefully. But we all did what we had to. If we hadn't, Seraphis would have continued, and he wouldn't have stopped at humanity. Narish gave a slight nod, his expression thoughtful. Yes. The Council has many questions to answer, about its own oversight, and about how far Seraphis's influence reached. It's clear we need to rebuild trust here on Nexus. His eyes shifted to Kayla. I'll need allies I can trust to accomplish that. Kayla straightened, her loyalty and commitment to Nexus as clear as her resolve. I'm with you, Chief. We all know Nexus needs reform. Many of us believed in Seraphis once, but those days are gone. You have my full support. Narish inclined his head, acknowledging her pledge. Good. I'll be making significant changes, and I'll need leaders like you to help me carry them out. A faint chime interrupted them, signaling the beginning of the formal council meeting. Today, the council would vote on Seraphis's expulsion and decide on the official recognition of humanity's place within Nexus. For Alex, it was a turning point, not just for him, but for every human on Nexus, some of whom still didn't know the scale of what had been at stake. Narish led them into the main chamber, a vast, circular hall filled with representatives from the various species aboard Nexus. Their conversations quieted as Narish took his place at the head of the room, his presence commanding their attention. Alex and Kayla took seats to the side, remaining in the shadows as Narish began to address the assembly. "My fellow representatives," Narish started, his voice resonating through the hall. "Today, we face a critical moment in Nexus's history. Recent events have shown us that prejudice, left unchecked, can rot the core of any society, even one as diverse and united as ours." Murmurs filled the chamber as Narish continued. "As you know, Council Member Seraphis has been implicated in a plot to sabotage Nexus's core systems, attempting to pin the blame on our human residents. He has violated our principles, our unity, and our trust. It is my recommendation that he be removed from his position on the Council, and that we pursue charges to address the full extent of his crimes." A murmur of surprise and outrage rippled through the room. Not all of them had believed the rumors, but Narish's confirmation made it undeniable. One representative, a towering, silver-skinned woman named Elora, spoke up. "And what of the humans, Chief Narish? How do we know they are not still a threat?" Alex clenched his fists, feeling the familiar sting of prejudice. But Kayla placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder, her expression calm and steady. Narish's reply was firm. Humanity's only crime was being an easy target for Seraphis's ambitions. Without humans like Alex Marlowe, we would never have uncovered the truth. He risked his own life to bring this to our attention. Alex felt all eyes turned to him, some curious, others skeptical. He met their gazes, refusing to back down. "If I may speak," he said, his voice steady, cutting through the tension. "Humanity came to Nexus for the same reason as every other species here, to build a future together. Some might see us as a threat, but I believe we have something valuable to offer. The sabotage showed me what's at stake, not just for humans, but for all of us. We're willing to contribute, to work for this alliance, if you'll let us." Silence settled over the room as the council absorbed his words. Finally, Elora spoke again, her tone measured. "If we are to move forward, then we must look to the future without the lens of fear and mistrust. Perhaps humanity does have a place here, if they are committed to our common goals." Kayla, emboldened by Elora's words, stepped forward. "Our people are more alike than we realize. Humanity brings a resilience and perspective that can strengthen Nexus. We need allies who think differently, who challenge us, or Nexus will stagnate." A wave of nods and murmurs of agreement rippled through the room, and Narish seized the moment. "Then let us vote," he announced. "We will decide both the fate of Seraphis and the official recognition of humanity's status within Nexus. Those in favor of expelling Seraphis from the Council, please raise your hand." Hands rose across the room, one after another, until almost every representative had voted for Seraphis's removal. Narish nodded in approval. "The motion carries. Seraphis will be expelled and formally charged with endangering Nexus." He continued, his voice solemn. "Now, regarding humanity's position here. If we are to move forward, we must do so without prejudice. Those in favor of granting humanity equal standing within Nexus, raise your hand." Alex held his breath, watching as hands began to lift one by one, filling the room with a quiet but powerful affirmation. A few representatives hesitated, but the majority raised their hands, casting their vote in humanity's favor. "It is decided," Narish announced, his voice carrying a note of finality. "Humanity will be recognized as a permanent member of Nexus. May this alliance be the start of a new era of cooperation." A weight lifted from Alex's shoulders, relief mingling with pride. He exchanged a glance with Kayla, who offered him a small but genuine smile. As the council meeting adjourned, representatives approached Alex, some offering hesitant greetings, others more enthusiastic. Elora stopped in front of him, her expression reserved but respectful. "Mr. Marlowe," she said, inclining her head, "you've proven that humanity has integrity and courage. I look forward to seeing what your people will bring to Nexus." Thank you, Alora, Alex replied, his voice warm. We'll do our best not to let you down. As the crowd dispersed, Narish approached Alex and Kayla, his expression softened. This alliance will need work, he said quietly. But today, we've planted a seed. I'm grateful for what you both have done. Alex nodded, the reality of the day settling over him. It's a start, he agreed. And we'll keep doing our part. Narish's eyes gleamed with pride. That's all we can ask. Together, Alex and Kayla walked through the bustling hallways of Nexus, no longer outsiders but allies in a shared future. The challenges weren't over, but they had gained something rare and powerful: trust. As they returned to their quarters, Alex felt a deep sense of purpose. They had fought for their place, and won. Now, it was time to build the future they'd only dreamed of, here, among the stars.